in the beginning of the week. And so I knew that anybody that's here is meant to be. And it's amazing to share this photo with all of you. And I hope we have many more to come.
Thank you for having
together,
us.
of
Thank you for
course.
hosting. Yes. Lovely. Goosebumps. So many more.
She has a great place here.
She does.
It's
good
beautiful.
energy in here. Very, very.
It's a sanctuary. So just to let you guys all know, we are recording. We've started recording. So we got that, which is excellent, because I wanted to start by thanking you for hosting this amazing space and just creating such a beautiful sanctuary. You know, it's just like the moment I walked in, I was like, wow, good energy, just good vibes. You know?
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for creating this event and allowing you, inviting me to be part of it too. So we're here for the lunar eclipse the solar eclipse in Libra that just happened yesterday, the 14th, and then the lunar eclipse in Taurus that's coming up on the 28th. And so we're in now an eclipse portal. And so eclipses are energy portals. They're portals of many different kinds. If you think about it on the science level, when we have a solar eclipse, the moon comes in between the sun and the earth, and it blocks out the sun, and the sun's light doesn't reach the earth in certain places where you can actually see like the total solar eclipse, for instance, right? And so that will actually stop or interrupt the Earth's magnetic field, and so it creates like an energy shift, right? So it's a really powerful reset point. But not only is it a reset point, it's also, if you just think about all the crazy energy that shows up on an eclipse or during eclipse season, right? It's like a full moon magnified. Well, that is what it is, because the energies are even more intense, and you'll see a lot of change happen in your life and all around you in the world, in people you know's lives, every year, basically every 6 months during eclipse season. That's how these cycles work. And once you pay attention to it, you start to see, oh, this isn't just random, this isn't just chaos, this is a big shift that's happening, shaking us up, especially with regards to the specific astrological energies. So yesterday with the solar eclipse, it was an annular solar eclipse, so it wasn't total. That means it's a ring of fire around it, right? It looks like a ring of fire, because that's all you can see is that little ring of light. And it was in the sign of Libra, which was relationships, balance, justice, fairness, equity, peace and harmony. And then it also has its negative traits, like every sign does, right? With people-pleasing and just peace at all costs, and losing yourself for the sake of your relationships, right? Sacrificing yourself in your relationships too much. And so these are the things that we're actually, in particular, the shadow energies, the challenges and the unconscious expressions of Libra are the ones that the eclipse is calling us to let go of. That's because that's where the eclipse was happening, and that's where the south node of the eclipse was placed. So the nodes of the eclipse are where the axis of destiny is versus our past lives. The south node is the past and our past lives, the north node is our destiny and our future soul's intent, like where we're going in this lifetime. And so because the south node is in the sign of Libra, it's to let go of those things, and the north node in the sign of Aries, it's to enhance and move towards and develop those things. Now they might not feel familiar or comfortable. That's kind of the whole thing. The south node is familiar and comfortable, but it's comfort that holds us back. Right? It's like you need to leave the home to find your place in the world, right? And the south node relates to the moon and Cancer and our emotions of, those emotional habits we have that we don't want to let go of, that aren't serving us. And so you look to your own chart to find where the south node is in your chart, and those are the things where if you learn to let them go and develop the opposite qualities of the opposite sign, then you'll actually allow yourself to free yourself from the shadows of that trait and then gain all the benefits. Because there is mastery there. There's a whole slew of past lives that we've had where we've learned all we can from that energy, but the shadows are still holding us back because we haven't kind of balanced it out with the opposite pole. So when we start balancing it out, we start learning those other traits that help give it that other perspective. Like, oh, okay, this is where the integration is. Then we start to gain all the gifts of that mastery from the past, because we're not staying stuck and we're moving towards the place where our soul needs that balance, signified by the north node. So with the north node in Aries, we're meant to be more of an individual. It doesn't mean, being more of an asshole necessarily. Maybe it does in certain moments, right? I mean, discernment will be required. Venus in Virgo is a part of this eclipse, and Virgo is the sign of discernment. Discernment is the higher self of Virgo, where judgment is the lower self of Virgo. So that's a good way to look at it, right? It's like if we're judging ourselves or someone else, I was just sharing with Simone in the car, it's like what you judge you become, right? Because it's, first of all, just law of attraction, you're focusing on it, and you keep fixing it with energy and powerful passion, and hey, you're bringing that to you much faster. So discernment is a place where you can recognize, okay, that's not for me, that's not my choice, it's not what I want, but there's no charge. It's just a yes/no question. And when you really say no, and you're like, no, you're bringing it towards you, right? The no itself is not enough. It's where your focus and energy are going. That's where the manifestation comes. So this is where bringing all this stuff from our past subconscious, unconscious place to the light of day, we're probably all experiencing some degree of our relationships holding us back in some way, where maybe we were sacrificing ourselves in ways that weren't healthy. Maybe we weren't actually being true to our truest self, or we're seeing more of that now at least. All of this is the opportunity for that. And so we have, for today's reading with the astrology and the eclipse, I pulled a single card from the light to your stack, the Magician. So you guys can pass it around if you'd like and take a look at it. I'll put it to the camera a bit later. But the Magician is, it's the first card. Does it have a number to it, right? Yeah, number 1. It's the first card of the tarot deck. How perfect. And it's so crazy too, because as I was shuffling the deck, I saw it. And Kendra and I were talking about it. Kendra couldn't come today, but we had an amazing conversation. This was basically during the eclipse. And she just kept mentioning the Magician. She just kept talking about that Magician consciousness. And then it's the card that came up today. As I was shuffling it, I saw the Magician, and I was, it was on my mind because she was talking about it yesterday. I was like, oh wow, yeah, that would be a cool card to pull. And then boom, it's the card that I pulled after I shuffled it, right? So I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? Like this is like the astrology, the higher signs, the eclipses that show us our path, our guidance, and we have to follow, we have to trust it, we have to go with it, because otherwise if we resist it, that's where the shit hits the fan, excuse my strong language. But so there's an adventure, there's a pioneering, there's our own direction with that Aries North Node that we're meant to follow. Now we also have Chiron in the sign of Aries too. And so Chiron is the wounded healer. It's also our wound where our gift enters, right? Once we heal that wound in ourselves, we can bring the gift of healing that wound to healing other people who have that same wound, right? It's like we've come through the trials and the tribulations, we've integrated the wound. We may never fully get rid of it, but we've learned how to heal and address it, and by then we can start to share that healing with other people who share that same wound. So, it's also a generational thing, right? Because Chiron's a slow-moving planet, so your peers will share, those things with you too. But right now, Chiron is in Aries, and so there is an identity wound, because Aries rules the identity, right? That sense of self that we're talking about, that maybe we've been sacrificing too much for our relationship. I mean, if we just take a look at the state of the world, sovereign individualism is not really popular nor encouraged, right? Society wants people to just kind of stay in line and maybe stay down and not make too much noise, don't rock the boat, right? Just keep the status quo. So being a strong individual or leader or pioneer, like Aries would indicate, is maybe something we could all do more with, but at the very least, because Chiron is moving through Aries, something we've also been experiencing wounds around, and the opportunity to heal those wounds. So maybe just on the soul level, you could call it healing the ego and the shadow parts of our identity, where we identify with things that just really aren't us, or don't serve us, or just not appropriate in this lifetime. But that's a big part of the solar eclipse in Libra. So relationships, Venus is very strongly featured in the eclipse, and Mars. But Venus is in a weakened state in Virgo, and Mars is in a strong state in Scorpio. So it is indicating more of that moving towards that Mars energy of our identity, right? We're having to practice discernment in our relationships with Venus and Virgo. And with Mars and Scorpio, like maybe being a little bit more just like allowing yourself to be the asshole even in your own story, right? You don't have to necessarily behave like an asshole to other people, but at least, at the very, very least, don't give a shit of sacrificing your true self for someone who might be calling you an asshole when really they're the asshole, right? Like you let yourself be the asshole in someone else's story enough that you're your true self, regardless of what kind of shadow relationships it might cost you, right? And that's where we have to love ourselves more, to not sacrifice ourselves for relationships that are not serving our highest good. It's not always easy to do if we have some codependency or some fear, I don't want to be alone, or can I make it by myself, or all the things that can show up with the South Node of Libra. So what's very interesting, Simone, I was listening yesterday looking into your chart, Never mind the Venus in Virgo, which, because Venus was just retrograde in Virgo for quite some time, that's a big part of this eclipse energy too, right? The fact that I met with 3 Venus and Leo people yesterday during the eclipse, I mean, it's the energy is activated, right? So there's our heart in there. It's like giving our heart to relationships that deserve us, not having loyalty for relationships that don't, because Venus rules loyalty. Leo rules loyalty in the heart, right, where we give our heart. And so if you're giving your heart to people who don't deserve it, that's not self-love, which is what Leo really rules, right? So we have to find that self-love, to love ourselves enough to walk away from relationships that are hurting us, things like this, right? These are big symbols that are showing up for this eclipse cycle. And the way eclipse cycles work with this eclipse portal, they'll last for 6 months, to even 18 months, because of the way the moon cycles work. So these energies will also probably show up for the next 6 months until the next eclipse cycle, because the 2-week period between the lunar and solar eclipse is like a projection of the following 6 months. And so everything that we're doing right now is a preview of what's going to be coming for the next 6 months. And everything you do for the rest of the almost 2 weeks during this eclipse cycle is going to be a preview for the next 6 months, at least energetically. I think of it as like an energetic imprint or like fractal hologram for the next 6 months too.
Can I have clarification on that?
Sure, what do you mean?
Like, so do you mean like the struggles or like the attempts that we're trying to reconcile now will continue for 6 months, or how we handle those struggles and the reconciliation of getting back to right will project for the next 6 months?
Either or and or both, depending on your choices.
Okay.
Right? So that's the most important part. It's not all predeterministic in a sense. I mean, this is the point I was trying to make before the camera started about like, the Sagittarian arts being very hard to pin down. And so to try and like pigeonhole any sort of thing into like one thing only is cause for possible likely pitfalls, because there's so many things that can show up. That's why it's really good to stay in the realm of the right brain and the symbolic, and also even the feeling and intuitive, because that will show you also what's showing up, right? And we can kind of navigate that too. We need the logic still, but we need both really to get the best results. And so,
Question.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
is it more about awareness and not so much as action right now?
But again, not just either or, but
okay.
both,
Okay.
right? You want the awareness with the action. You don't want to take action without awareness, though.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely not, because that is most likely going to be more of the past that you're putting into the future. And so that's the other thing about these eclipse cycles. We're like also, let's call them controllers, would like to create events at these times. Even if they're not necessarily doing it consciously, there's a subconscious, spiritual impulse, because the energy is there. Like, this is an opportunity to create more of the same in the future, right? Whatever we're creating now. So it's very easy to fall into more of the same patterns in the future if you're choosing them still, right? Like, I'll give a little example. Despite my commitment to no longer watch Stranger Things because of all the trauma, that amazing show, it's really well produced.
I stopped watching years ago, and no wonder why.
It creates so much trauma, but it's also so good. So it's
it
compelling
is.
for me, and then that's like my Scorpio, like just like wanting to like figure it all out and stuff. So I started watching it again during before the eclipse by like a week, and it was not the last season, which was the most traumatic for me, but one of the previous ones. So I figured, all right, it's less intense. Like, let me just like give myself a little bit. But even though I still wanted to watch it yesterday, the day before, and it was like 3 days before the eclipse, I was like, no, I'm not watching this during eclipse cycle. I'm not bringing more of that energy into my following 6 months. Maybe that's part of my own self-sabotage that wanted to see that at this time anyway. Like, why is that showing up right now before the eclipse? Like, that struck me as significant, right? So just maybe one example. There are other shadows I could probably, give examples of too. But that's the thing, is like, some of the karmic weight or history wants to show up now, and it's like shaking up to the surface. And it's like, are we gonna shake it up to let it go? Or are we gonna shake it up and move on? Right? The universe is also kind of testing us in that way. It's like, do we really want to move forward into our higher timelines, or are we still gonna choose the same old shit from before? We still have that choice. So what was interesting that I was noticing about looking into our charts, Simone, you also, because I felt this Aquarian energy from you, right?
So wild. Never.
And so I looked up her chart, and it was there in her Uranus and Jupiter placements, both in Libra, which is again where the eclipse is. So Uranus rules Aquarius, Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So it's like it's a blend of the Sagittarius and Aquarius energies that you have strongly, especially they have an affinity to each other. right? Not only in general, because Aquarius and Sag get along well in general because they sextile, but in your chart because they're so close to each other. They're kind of married. They're in the same sign. So it's what's very interesting about that is the next eclipse has Jupiter and Uranus together.
Oh my goodness.
This is the kind of stuff you cannot make up, right? So I also have Jupiter and Uranus in my chart together. I think you might even have some. You have some. I know your Jupiter's with Pluto. I forget where your Uranus is. It's in Scorpio, maybe. I don't remember that placement by heart. But the point is, there is a strong Uranian, Sagittarian, Jupiter-Uranus energy in this next eclipse, the lunar eclipse in Taurus. Especially because the moon is at 5 degrees of Taurus and Jupiter is at 11 degrees Taurus. So it means Jupiter is conjunct the moon. So this is a big emotional healing opportunity with the next eclipse. That's beyond a usual eclipse because of that Jupiter-Moon conjunction. Jupiter is Sagittarius expansion, extra, more, right? Sagittarius is very extra. And so with the Jupiter-Moon conjunction, they're going to have extra emotion, right? But you also have the opportunity for extra emotional healing because Taurus is a sign of healing. The Earth signs, particularly Virgo and Taurus, Capricorn not as much, but you can heal through accomplishment too. That's possible, right? It's just not known for that as much. But you can certainly heal at the top of the mountain. I mean, Sag has that in common. You know, they're right next to each other, Sag and Cap. So there's that connection too. But you know, and then Uranus and Aquarius is what? Liberation, freedom, you know, breakthroughs, right? It's also antisocial personality, you know, these kinds of things. Only because you're a reference, not because it's applicable to you. And so, you know, there could be social stuff that we're having to confront. There's also just like, you know, Uranus and Aquarius are the rebels, right? And sometimes that can be labeled as antisocial. Sometimes it might be, especially if it's being a rebel for no cause, right? But if you're a rebel for a cause, that is to say, like, for the highest good of humanity, well, that's like the highest promise of Aquarius. And so that is there in that next eclipse coming up. You know, we have that promise of emotional liberation with the Uranus, Jupiter, and Moon conjunction. In fact, it could be extremely liberating, right? Or it could be chaotic. It might even be both. Because that's Aquarius and Uranus. It's also chaos, upheaval, you know, upset, right? You have to upset the status quo. And it's uncomfortable oftentimes to change. So those could be there on an emotional level too, right? Emotional discomfort is probably likely between now and then. I mean, it already might have been showing up, you know, that's also possible because of the way all the energies are connected. So Mars is also very strongly featured in the next eclipse with the Sun, Mercury, and Mars conjunct in Scorpio. So again, there's more of that like soul level self, because Scorpio, we're talking about the soul. And so, you know, it's like, who am I on a soul identity level, and where are the, you know, maybe even spiritual illusions of my past or our past holding me back, right? Because Sagittarius and Uranus, I mean, Sagittarius is much more real spirituality. Uranus rules like higher consciousness, you know. Sagittarius also rules religion. But there's that South Node proximity to the Moon and Jupiter, so there's past life stuff there too. It's that, you know, like what emotional wounds around our spirituality or our religion do we have from the past that might be holding us back? This is also a good way to look at that placement and connection. And so these are some of the themes we see showing up, but there's a lot of Venus energy. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about specifically because the Sun is aspecting a few things, and that will color the energy that shows up with the eclipse. So we have a semi-square to Venus, which deals with social activities and intimate relationships, which might be impeded with this astrological pairing in the sense of feeling shy, lacking in self-confidence. There could be a need to like work to overcome those feelings and allow yourself to show up fully. But when you do, it's worth it, and you feel like the ability to relate with the world that it's occupies, right? These are some of the energies that are showing up with that Sun semi-square Venus connection. Mars and Venus were sextile, even though the Sun was semi-square Venus in the eclipse yesterday. So with the Sun's nature of our conscious mind, you know, that might be, we might miss things. Our consciousness might not be contacting that energy fully. But the Mars and Venus energy are in sextile, perfectly blending. So our desire and our ability to attract it is working in harmony, right? So there's good stuff happening, but there's also challenges. It's always a mix. And so we also have the conjunction to Mars with the Sun. So this is giving us the ability to be hardworking and energetic. There might be impulsiveness, a love of adventure, and anything that provides outlet for boundless energy. You can initiate, take risks, and maybe at times act too impulsively, right? So there's potentials for burnout, like watch your energy, manage it, because there is a lot of it, and you might overuse it because you're like, this is great, I want to keep going. You overdo it. And then there's also an opposition to Jupiter, so that feeds that extra potential to go over the top, right? Jupiter and Sag have that tendency to go over the top. And that's the downside of that lovely, free, loving, expansive energy of Jupiter and Sag is too much freedom, too many choices, no direction, ADD mess. So there can be a restlessness inside of that, right? That wanderlust thing, and just big goals, big dreams, and too big to ground down into reality in the sense it's like if it's so big, like it might never actually manifest, right? Because you're not taking practical, it's too far from manifesting in the physical because there's no physical support for that manifestation, right? It's like, how do I even get that big thing here? Well, you have to start smaller. Well, sometimes Sag is not good with that. So we need to still practice that discernment and not be too over-optimistic about our possibilities and our potentials, right? Stay grounded within the massive transformational energies that are available to us, right? So, if it's something like, well, I want to be a billionaire, it's like, all right, fine, but maybe start with 1,000 or a million, or and I want to have total transformation in my relationships. Like, okay, fine, but let's start with your codependency and fears of being alone, right? So being grounded about whatever big dream, it can happen, but you have to take those practical Virgo steps and create some practical Virgo values, right? Because Venus rules values, and she's in Virgo, so there's a value to analyzing it, practicing your discernment and finding what will work for you and what won't. Trimming the fat and sticking with the good stuff. There's a trine to Saturn, which is also very good for building new structures. So we are actually given the opportunity right now to really change our reality if we're doing the work and we're, creating the structure for ourselves. And that just means the structures of our choices. It doesn't even have to go further than that. It's like, how are we giving our energy to our life every day? And that's up to us, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect, but Capricorn is like that consistency and that responsibility, that diligence every day, even if it's not a lot every day, just like you're doing that everyday work to get yourself to the top of that mountain, right? You're not delaying. And the one that I was really excited about, aside from a sextile to Juno, is beautiful relationships as well, and the sense of money that's related to Juno. So Juno is the goddess with a variety of roles and functions. She's protector of women and children, advisor to the people, and in a way a marriage counselor. She was also known as Juno Moneta. The first Roman coins had her image on the face, and then were naturally called moneta from the term which we get money derived, right? So Juno deals with money as well, right? But this is like where we also not receiving as much as we're giving in a relationship, right? I've heard other astrologers even talking about that. That's a very clear South Node Libra dynamic, right? And so there is a big theme around money. Venus is very strongly featured throughout the whole eclipse. And so this is a big part of why we're doing a Lakshmi activation today. And so we'll do that just a moment away. Because that energy of money is very strongly featured. I don't know if anyone else has had, interesting phenomenon showing up around money lately. I certainly have, in unexpected ways. It could be because my Venus is in Leo, and so
me too.
Yeah,
I also had some very unexpected.
So then maybe
very
that's
welcome. I think,
I think that's a sign of more good things to come. Should we learn those relationship lessons, and not continue to sacrifice ourselves and our energy, which will drain us not only physically but also monetarily, right? There's an opportunity for great abundance ahead. Should we choose to align with these energies that are showing up? Never mind, the eclipse being in Libra, Venus being a big part of it, and so all these Venus and money energies are showing up. Venus was money and our values, things that are valuable. And here we have Juno, also strongly featured, related to money too, right? So there's lots of opportunities for us to create abundance and harmony and balance in our own lives right now, if we're doing the work that these areas are indicating are, on the table, basically. The Aries Libra axis and then the Scorpio Taurus axis. So Scorpio Taurus is self-value, possessions I have, right? I have this body, I have this tea, I have, my home, my car, whatever. And, I have this job, I have this bank account. Whereas Scorpio is we share, we're pooling our resources together. And so, there is definitely a calling together of merging our resources with others, but it's in a way that feels integral to that true self, and not in a way where we feel like we're being parasited, having a parasite, or someone drain our energy. And so, unless there's any other questions, I think we should probably just start with the Lakshmi Activation shortly. I don't know if Ari wants to join for that.
Ari?
It's over there.
Oh.
I'm curious what it is and how do you say it correctly?
Sure, yeah, we'll definitely go over it, and feel free to write it down. I can put it on my phone as well. I think we just have one more person.
Oh, is that my friend Jordan?
So,
Where is it already?
yeah.
Miss Adrienne.
Oh, we did.
Adrian!
So,
Yes.
what if your Venus is in Virgo?
Well, so
But-
this eclipse will
Positive,
affect
negative?
you very strongly in your Venus particulars.
I'm looking at my charts now. I'm like,
I'm excited for the next eclipse because the next eclipse has Venus right on my sun. So that is another indicator for me personally that finances are changing, right? For the Venus to be on your sun on eclipse is a big deal. That means the next 6 months are going to relate to that for you. So I'm very excited. I've gotten so many signs in the past 2 weeks alone, which is actually part of the eclipse portal. It's related. It's kind of like leading into it. So for people who have Virgo energy in their chart, anything in the sign of Virgo, possibly strong Mercury placements, and the 6th house, they will feel this energy too. They will definitely, you in particular. You said your Venus is in Virgo?
Virgo.
Do you know what degree?
I don't, but I
Beginning, middle, or ends?
I want to say it's in the beginning.
Okay.
In the
So
beginning.
if it's in the beginning, it'll be softly affected, but still affected, because it's in the same sign. So proximity and sign will matter a lot.
Is there like a positive? It is a good.
It could be both, but I mean, you want to really look to what's already showing up for you, because what's showing up in your experience is where you're going to find the guide points and the signposts. And charts will inform that, right? Because you're already having some experiences. Hi.
Hello.
Adam. Nice to meet you, Carol.
Hi.
Adrian, nice to meet you. There's another chair over here if
Yes,
you want to
right
come
there,
closer,
Adrian.
or wherever you're most comfortable.
Ariel, you can come here too. You have a seat right here.
I think he's happy over there.
Chiron up in there, but is that
Chiron in Virgo?
17. Chiron's also really in Virgo.
Oh wow, so that's going to affect you even more strongly for it.
I didn't realize that there was anything happening with Chiron for the eclipse. So this has been very, very informative.
There's a lot of healing happening in general because Chiron rules healing, right? So
And you know what really stood
Hi,
out
Lindsay.
was
Nice to
when
meet
you were talking about the incoming of blessings and finances and all those great things. If that other space was cleared appropriately. Like I heard you say
Yeah.
that, and that
Yeah.
really stood out to me.
that's really great that you caught that because that's so accurate and vital. And that's, having the space of mind to not replay the same old story and, do something new, right? Experience something different. And so, that's a big part, that so much of the spiritual work boils down just to that, really, and it's so much easier said than done. But when we can clear that emotional space, and that's the work, right? It's to be here in a human body, to feel, not just to bypass it with our mind or think that God's going to do it for us completely. Yeah, God will meet us halfway. Goddess, God, whatever name you want to put on it, doesn't matter.
God helps the ones who help themselves.
Exactly. We are that energy. It is us. It's beyond us too. It's all connected, and it's available to us. But we have to do what we're here to do because otherwise, we're not God. If we're just giving it up to God, we're just like a little baby. Take care of me. It's like, no, I am God. I don't need anyone to take care of me. I can do it because God works through me, right? So that's the lesson and the lessons. But to do that in concert with our humanness. Right? Not to cut ourselves off from it or suppress it or deny it.
By free will. Free will intent. Free will.
Exactly. Well said.
Yes. I love that you meet in concert too.